So again, thank you all for joining. My name is Jennifer Rose, and I am the worldwide MDR channel sales lead here at WatchGuard. Today, I wanted to start with something I think we can all agree on. Many of our customers are running Microsoft Defender. Microsoft Defender is built into a product that they're already using. So it's really familiar. And because it's built in, it's very easy. And for the most part, it does a really good job at detections. You won't hear this from many manufacturers or really salespeople in general. But this session isn't about replacing Defender. It's not about saying it doesn't work, because it does. And we want to dive a little bit deeper into what happens next after the detection. So I want to start off by putting a real situation out there. Hopefully you guys haven't had to go through this, but let's say it's 2 a.m. on a Friday night, and your Defender, it triggers a high severity alert. So what happens next, right? There's a lot of questions for you to consider, for your customers to consider. First of all, is anyone watching? More importantly, who's responsible to disable the compromised account? Is there a process for who contacts the customer? And really, how fast does all of this happen? So the unfortunate, the uncomfortable truth is that alerting on its own does not stop anything. It is just information. And protection only happens when someone takes action. And that's really where the real risk lives, in that time, right? The gap between receiving the alert and taking the action. And that's the key of what we're talking about today. Not the tools or not the features, but the operational realities that your customers face, that you face every day, and how we can help you all to reduce that risk. So attacks, right? They look different today than they have in the past. It's no longer really loud, obvious malware. Attacks are much more stealthy, and they start very unassumingly. So you get a phishing email, an MFA fatigue attack, there's a reused password, a token theft, a login that sort of looks normal. So attackers, they don't just smash the door down, right? They just simply log in. And the problem is, if they succeed, you're going to receive an alert from Defender. So you'll receive a suspicious sign-in. You'll get an alert that maybe there's impossible travel, risky user detection. You'll get an alert. You receive an alert, and from the time it takes to investigate that, the attackers have the ability to move really fast. And they're going to escalate privileges, they're going to move laterally, and then they'll start accessing other things like SharePoint or OneDrive, or even exfiltrate data. And really, all of this happens in the time between the alert and the validation. And when the damage happens, it's not Defender's fault, because Defender, it did its job. The damage happens because no one validated the alert and no one responded fast enough. So if the bad guys succeed, again, you might receive an alert Defender. It happens all the time. And the time between the alert and the validation is when all of that damage happens. Detection is really the first step, and response is what actually stops the attack. And that distinction is very critical. So what's missing in Defender-only environments? First, 24/7 monitoring. The ability to correlate signals, alert validation, real-time containment, and clear response ownership. So again, the information is there, the alert is there, but it still requires a person to go in and to review them. You have to decide the severity level, you have to correlate all that information now across identity and cloud activity. And then you have to decide, right, is this isolated event? Is it spreading? And then take the action. So normally, if we're talking about one alert on its own, let's say that takes, most teams anywhere from 8 to 10 minutes to move through that entire process. Now I want you to expand upon what your team is doing in a normal day, right? 9 to 5. A lot of times these alerts, they can get reviewed in a timely manner, but your team is likely juggling other things. So they're dealing with tickets or onboarding new customers, handling escalations, and so on and so forth. So security alerts are now competing for attention. So without operationalizing this in real time, you start to have gaps that create exposure. And this is where MDR comes in and why it exists. So when we talk about core MDR for Microsoft, it's built to operate on top of Defender and Microsoft 365 security tools. And we're taking those signals and turning them into action. So let's break this all down. First and foremost, we're going to watch continuously. Defender, it produces massive amounts of signals, and it is almost impossible for a human team, especially a growing MSP, to manually triage that volume 24/7. So we bring in automation to help prioritize all these signals. We filter out the noise, we identify behavioral patterns, and we bring up real anomalies. But AI alone, it's just not enough either. It can't make that final decision in high impact situations. And that's where SOC analysts step in. So we have SOC analysts that are actively triaging, actively investigating, and they're doing all of this when your teams are even fast asleep. And again, not every alert is an attack. So false positives, that creates alert fatigue. Validating what's real can be exhausting, but it's really everything. So a mature MDR service should be able to review context and signals and check telemetry, and then also investigate related activity and determine the scope. And this is where human expertise really matters. Being able to decide if something is a one-off or if it's just the beginning of something bigger, it's a judgment call. And if you can't make those validations without confidence, you end up either ignoring too much or you overreact to absolutely everything. So let's say something is confirmed. Now we get into speed, and that's where this really matters. MDR should be able to take guided or automated actions. So in a service like Core MDR from Microsoft, response actions are aligned to predefined playbooks and authorized workflows. So what that means is that containment isn't limited or waiting on an email chain or someone to reply, and it's not full automation without the human validation. So again, the humans in the SOC are ensuring that the action is appropriate. They're making sure that they understand the scope. They are understanding the cause. You're receiving clear explanation as well as documentation that you can take to your customers and share with them. So I want to shift a little bit from the technical piece over to the business side, because this isn't just about risk. It's about growth and how you are positioning these services. So your customers, they likely already have detection. Microsoft has done a great job of embedding it into their licensing. The more important question is who is actually responding when something happens? And this is important because the market is really shifting to a more operational conversation. This shift is great for our partners, it's great for you because it requires expertise, it requires availability, it requires accountability, all of which are billable value. So there's a couple of ways for you to address this in your business if you aren't today. First, we'll call it the simple approach, but not necessarily simple, is that you can just go ahead and build a SOC. If you want to hire analysts, stand up playbooks, provide coverage, implement automation, manage your training, manage your turnover, and so on, partners quickly realize how heavy and how expensive that becomes. Of course, you can continue business as usual and hope, fingers crossed, that nothing gets missed and you can accept the risk. Of course, I would advise against this one because it's never going to end well. Or third, you can layer operational security on top of Defender, not replace it. This is really where a partner-first service like MDR fits. So it allows you to increase your security maturity. It allows you to protect your customers, and you can do all of this after your normal business hours, while also reducing liability, growing your business, and setting up your internal team for success. And this is truly the real opportunity for you. Again, we're not selling detection because your customers already have it. For your customers, you are selling the 24/7 response ownership, a reduced risk exposure, and peace of mind when something happens at 2 a.m. So that shift in the market is going from, do you have security tools, to who is actually responding? And that's a very different conversation. The most successful partners, they're leaning into that shift and giving themselves the ability to grow managed service revenue over the next few years. So I want to talk to you guys about something practical and something that you can actually do this week. First, I would suggest that you go back take a look at your existing Defender customers and think about response. So let's think about things of what is the process or the workflow that you or your customers have for watching and responding to high severity alerts. Is all this documented? Where? Who has the authority to disable? Who has the authority to shut down a device or an account? And how long does all of this take? When you actually take the time to map these things out, it really helps you to understand where in your business there's gaps or where in your customer's environment there's gaps. The good thing about gaps is that once you've identified them, you now have an opportunity. So this gives you the ability to go back to your customers and to say, listen, we've reviewed your Defender environment and we have identified some places where we see a potential breakdown. So then the next step is to do a pressure test and to do this with your customers. I like to walk them through, right? What would happen if a critical alert fired at 2 a.m.? Who's notified? Who's investigating it? Who's deciding? And then how long is this all going to take? I've rarely asked this question and not received some level of hesitation. You get the pause or, well, it depends, I think. And these moments really reveal uncertainty. And that is such a powerful thing because this is now the realization that having Defender doesn't mean you're going to have response. So if response is something that you just include to your end users, it's basically invisible. And invisible services, they don't create margin and they don't differentiate your business. So what we suggest you do, and we have a whole team that's here to help you out with this, is to define it, to help you name it, help you package it. So if you wanted to call it a 24/7 response tier or security operations coverage or Defender response, whatever you choose, right? You are now able to offer your customers continuous threat response, containment, and a clear ownership when something goes wrong. So customers, they already assume, right, detection exists. They're using it as a check the box. And response is where that differentiation and all the revenue really lies. So when you take the time to sit with your customers and define all of this clearly, that gives you the ability to also price this very confidently, to explain it simply, and then when renewal comes, to be able to justify the cost. Most importantly, we want to eliminate any gray areas around responsibility, right? And we want to make sure that we're not adding additional complexity. So this is about making all the responses very intentional, very visible, and valuable. And that's how you move your teams over from managing tools to owning protection. All right, great. If there's no questions, like I said, I want to thank everyone for joining this short webinar today. Feel free to reach out to your channel team or myself if you have any further questions.